This is the Luxury Travel Innovators podcast, and I'm your host, Adam Deflorian, founder and CEO of AZDS. Join me as I talk to the most influential leaders in the hospitality industry and get a first-class look into the world of luxury travel. Let's take off. To kick off season 1 of Luxury Travel Innovators, I'm joined by Nathan Lump, the editor-in-chief of National Geographic magazine. He leads the strategic and creative direction of the brand's editorial content across numerous platforms with the goal of helping people discover and understand the wonders of our world while inspiring them to protect it. An award-winning editorial executive with previous tenure at Travel + Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, and the New York Times, Nathan and I discuss how National Geographic thinks of travel holistically, the innovations that AI could bring, and the trends of modern travelers today. Nathan, thank you so much for being our inaugural guest on Luxury Travel Innovators.
I'm so honored.
It was a perfect fit considering my first magazine that I subscribed to as a child was National Geographic Traveler.
And
Really? Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, which is no longer, right? Currently.
It's in the U.S. in print, correct.
Okay.
It still exists in some international markets.
Nice.
But of course, we still have core National Geographic, nationalgeographic.com.
Absolutely. So overall, as far as the National Geographic brand, it's so iconic, right? And it's legendary in so many different ways. What inspires you about National Geographic?
Oh, gosh. Look, National Geographic was created 137 years ago. We're one of the longest running editorial publications in America. Actually, the world, I suppose. What I love about this brand is the degree to which it is deeply engaged with the entire world. And our audience is composed of people who are genuinely interested in having a deeper and broader understanding of that world, inclusive of a whole lot of different things, cultures and science and animals and all the things that are going on and the way in which the world is changing. And, that just as an editor, that is really exciting as a remit. It means that there's a lot of different stuff that we can do, that we have permission to do. And as someone who's just deeply curious about a whole lot of things myself, that speaks to me. So,
and how does it differ here than some of your previous experiences, right? Travel + Leisure, we've known each other a long time, Expedia, et cetera. What's different about National Geographic?
So I would say, travel isn't the only thing that we do, obviously, but it is a really important part of our brand. We tend to think I've worked, as you said, at pure travel brands, Travel + Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, and the New York Times. And so when we do travel, we always have to think about why are we doing it, right? We're satisfying a need for our audience, but we're also really thinking about, because not everyone is coming to us for travel necessarily. They might be coming to us for a different reason. They're interested in science or something, and then we're going to give them some travel. We have to really think a lot about what makes a travel story a National Geographic travel story. And in many cases for us, that's because it's trying to take people maybe a little bit deeper into into an experience or into a place, into a culture. Try to give them a greater understanding of something. So we're a little bit less most of the time about sort of this is an amazing hotel or whatever. We're more about okay, why do you want to go to this place? What would you want to do when you go there? What would you get out of that experience? And that's kind of how we think about travel. It doesn't mean that we're always serious, though. I want to say, I also recognize very much travel is fun and people travel to enjoy themselves. So I don't want us to be, when we do travel, I don't want us to always have to be speaking to some, intellectualized idea of why someone would get on a plane and go somewhere or get in a car and drive. But we are always thinking about kind of what's the value exchange for the traveler and what are they going to get out of it? And I think that also speaks to something that people, I think, really want out of travel these days.
Totally. And it's so unique because I think in addition to just being more than just travel, it probably expands and covers a larger age range too, right? Just even walking into the building here in DC, it was incredible, right? You have the lab downstairs. There were things that I could see my kids being interested in too. So
you're absolutely right. And we do have a really broad, we publish kids products as well. So, actual, magazines and things for kids, all the way on, well into adulthood. And, and we do have a really broad age range. We're the largest brand on social media in terms of aggregate number of followers across the platforms in the world, of any type. So we're bigger than Kardashians, and we're bigger than a lot of other commercial brands. And and as you might expect, our social audience is really heterogeneous. So we've got young people and older people, a true global audience, a lot of different demographics and psychographics in that huge group, because we're more than 850 million followers.
It's incredible.
And so you, just as you can imagine, it's a patchwork, and it's beautiful. And I mean, I really love that about what we do here, because and it's really it's exciting to engage with, because it's like we've got to speak to a lot of different kinds of people. So when we think about our content, we have to think a lot about what's gonna appeal across generations, what's going to appeal to different kinds of people from different countries, different cultures. That, I think, is also an exciting challenge and something that we have a lot of fun with.
So you have such a global audience. Do you have that content all translated as well into local languages?
We do. Not obviously everything that we produce. So nationalgeographic.com, our website, is an English language site.
Okay.
Designed for folks who speak English. Although translation is getting much easier and faster, and that may change in the future. You may be able to, not very far off from now, choose a language you like and have it automatically run through the AI and turn into something else. But yes, but we have editions in many different countries. We publish in many, many, many different languages, certainly in print. And then we also have foreign language websites as well in many markets.
Amazing. So, obviously the podcast being all about innovation and bringing travel brands, travel leaders, extraordinary brands like National Geographic forward. And you're such a forward and progressive leader as well. And I'm curious, what have you done here at National Geographic that's different than when you started, that has sort of, been sort of an innovation related idea that you've implemented, and or how you've embraced AI in some way?
Sure. AI, I'm going to punt for a minute.
Fair.
But we're obviously, like many journalistic editorial organizations, still trying to really figure out what the appropriate applications of AI are for the work that we do. I cited one, translation, which is pretty straightforward, but even that we're also committed to accuracy. But from a lot of what I've been focused on here is what I would say kind of modernizing our storytelling, and really thinking about, in addition to what stories we tell, sort of how we tell them and how they move across platforms in a way that respects the fact that today any given consumer may prefer to get their content in a particular form or in a particular place. We used to, all of us, make a lot of assumptions, people read magazines, and that was like a thing that people did, and that's how you gave them stories. But of course now, there are people who don't read magazines. They have their feeds and social, and that's where they get most of what they consume, or
Totally.
or they're online consumers, and they're mostly on their phone or whatever it might be. So we really have to be thinking about how to make sure that the stories that we tell move across those platforms, move across those media types, in order to make sure that we're meeting consumers where they are. That's a standard issue thing that every media company should do, but not everyone does. And we certainly, I think, as a brand, needed to evolve a little bit in that direction. A big example of that has been how much we've been pushing into short form vertical video, in particular for social platforms, which wasn't something we were doing a lot of when I got here, and now we do a lot of it today. Again, following the consumer, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, et cetera, where a lot of folks are consuming in that way. That one of the other big things that I've been investing in lately and playing around with is what we call interactive storytelling. So how do we build digital experiences? This is mostly within our own platform, within nationalgeographic.com. Digital experiences that are immersive and interactive, where basically, we're not necessarily giving you a story in a totally linear format, where we're also kind of breaking the boundaries between different media types. So mixing video, audio, still photography, and words all together, and kind of trying to build the richest and most engaging experience that we can, and kind of just really take advantage of what is possible in digital. And again, that's something that some people do, not everyone does. It's something that I really believe in. I think sort of, if we think about how do we create best-in-class experiences for consumers in digital that kind of deliver the level of execution that we've done in print for decades and decades and decades, I think that's kind of an example of that. And so that's something we've been doing more and more of, and something I want to do continued more of. We did a gigantic feature. This isn't about travel, but although it is a place people go, a gigantic feature about some work that we did in the Amazon that we published last year. So we were working in the Amazon for 2 years, and we just had incredible trove of stuff, and we built this really super cool interactive experience that allows you to kind of dive deep in certain ways, and you can move horizontally and linearly, and there's just different ways of engaging with the content. And I love that kind of thing. And so that's something I like. It's just telling stories in different ways. I love experimenting with that.
I love it. I mean, I've obviously followed National Geographic on Instagram, and it's so engaging the way you guys place these like extraordinary images, and then you have questions a lot of the times, like, do you know, or this, impacts such and such, or a percentage of things that cause some illness, or, and it's very engaging the way that you guys do it. So
thank you.
It's very impressive.
We thank you. We try to do that. We want to, you've essentially got a nanosecond to hook somebody on social. It's literally I saw a statistic on this that it's like the amount of time of a human heartbeat is basically how much time you have to capture someone's attention when they're scrolling through their feed. And so it's got to be pretty immediate, and questions are a great way to do that, to pique someone's curiosity. But also, we're about answering questions as a brand. That's very much what we do. So I like to think that that's not like a clickbaity kind of thing to do. It's actually something that we're really designed to do.
Yeah, well, and there's authenticity in everything that you do, and it carries back to the National Geographic ethos. So it doesn't feel clickbaity at all. It really it feels authentic and actually very informative. And to your point, it's educating people, which is neat. Social channel wise, have you guys seen any shifts, or is it still primarily Instagram for you guys? Or
Instagram is our biggest platform of the social platforms, but we're active on all of them pretty much. Okay. And we're always looking at the emerging platforms. We were maybe a little bit later than some brands on TikTok, but that's been a big growth area. We launched actually not so long ago on WhatsApp, which we weren't we hadn't been on, and that's sort of an interesting platform, particularly for reaching global audiences. There's a lot of really, really strong engagement outside of the US on that platform. Yep. So that's been an interesting space, and what kind of you do there is a little bit different than what you do in some of the other platforms. And then YouTube is a huge also. I mean, I don't think of YouTube as technically a social platform. It's really, for me, a video viewing platform. Yeah. But that's been a huge growth area for us as well. From a overall trend perspective, it's sort of what I already said, that video has been a real driver of the engagement within those platforms. So even Instagram, I mean, we got so big on Instagram through our still photography, and we still put a lot of still photography on Instagram. But as the algorithm has shifted, video is what drives a tremendous amount of engagement there. So you see much more video in the mix than you used to from us.
For sure, yeah. And the way people engage with stories feels very different than the way they engage with their feed. And so it makes so much sense that you've had to pivot. And actually, I think from our findings with a lot of our partners at AZDS, it's been very interesting, right? Because the content production cost has went up so substantially, creating the good quality small snippets. And it doesn't mean it has to be high production value, but it's just even just the amount of time, if you see it as currency, that it takes to actually produce quality there, is much more challenging and time consuming than just a static in the feed.
No, totally. We've had to build new teams, new competencies around that kind of work as well. But it's so important. And look, and it's still kind of, you're absolutely right about all that. But of course, when you think back of what it used to be like to make video, I mean, now we all have handheld devices that can actually do it. It doesn't mean we're all good at it, but but it's so much easier than it once was, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
Totally. We're all photographers, and we can all capture things very easily with our phones, right? So, and it feels authentic and natural. Yeah. As far as your sort of goals when you came to National Geographic and sort of the direction that you're headed, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm curious, what additional sort of areas of opportunity do you want to either, personally achieve, as well as have the brand be able to achieve, in your next few years here?
I think there are certain things that I really am hoping we can do, some of which I've already touched on, really, particularly advancing our digital storytelling, really figuring out how do we do that in exceptional way for the person, because I know that like there are certain people who still like print, and we're
Yep.
very fortunate that we still have quite a lot of those people in our world, but like many people, that's just not how they prefer to consume content. And so I want to make sure that like we're really like doing something amazing for them. So that's one piece. There are certain areas. I mean, travel is actually one of them. It's we have been covering travel for a long time. We've slightly ebbed and flowed over the years in terms of how much of it we do, how visible it is. As you mentioned, we had a magazine called National Geographic Traveler in the U.S. for a number of years, and that no longer exists. I think travel is a really, it's obviously a personal passion of mine and a space in which I've worked for a long time, and I love it. And so I want to see us do more of it and bring it sort of across all of our platforms and all of our media types a bit more than we do today. Primarily today, most of our travel content sort of lives in nationalgeographic.com. I think we have more opportunity to extend more of that into social, bring more of it into some of our print products, and that's something I'm really excited about. Travel is just is a great space. It's right for us. It's very exciting. I also continue to think about how we engage with the world at a time when sometimes it can be hard to be optimistic, but do so in a way that gives people some insight into good things that are happening. Not to be Pollyannish about it, but I do, we are a brand that has always had a sort of thread of optimism in what we do. And so you'll see us perhaps more explicitly than we've done always in the past, begin to tell more stories about, people in particular who are like trying to do things, trying to make good things happen, try to address some of the challenges that the world faces in, creative and innovative ways. And that's sort of a flavor of storytelling that I would love for us to really kind of own, or do a bit more consistently and more impactfully than maybe some other people do. And I just want to make some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's like a banal answer, but
No, that's
but
great.
one of the things that we're so fortunate here, because we have this community of people that we work with who are like out in the field, like in really, really, remote and random corners of the globe every day, like exploring stuff. There's still stuff to explore out there in the world, and we have people who are out doing that, and just really bringing that forward, telling amazing stories about that work, and kind of reminding people that there is still so much to explore and learn about our world, and that's worth doing. Is I think is it's always been part of our mission. I think it's something we can kind of bring forward again in a way that I hope people will find compelling.
It's amazing. Then outside of sort of what you have set out to do, there's other areas of National Geographic, right? So there's expeditions,
Yep.
TV. Talk to us a little bit about that. What are the other sort of areas of the business?
Yeah, we I mean, look, this brand has got all kinds of extensions or tentacles or whatever metaphor you want to use. It's an extraordinary thing. It's one of the reasons I love working here. Yeah, we have so we have a big travel business, National Geographic Expeditions. So we are active. We sell and operate trips for people. Some really exciting trips in different places. We have a books business, and obviously television. We have been a television channel for a long time, and now also a television tile within Disney Plus and Hulu. You can find us there. So that's exciting. It's like a whole other kind of storytelling world that we have. We also make films and release films. For anybody who watched the Oscars not so long ago, Sugar Cane, which was nominated for a Academy Award for Best Documentary, was a National Geographic film. Really great, by the way, if you're looking for a good film. We also, of course, are, we have a nonprofit arm, the National Geographic Society, and they fund incredible research and storytelling. And that's a huge part of who we are and what we do is their work and funding grants. Oh, we have a really big consumer products business. So particularly in Asia, actually, if you go to Seoul or Tokyo, you'll see people wearing National Geographic parkas and rolling roller bags to the train station that say National Geographic on them. It's pretty cool. We have retail stores all across Asia.
Nice.
That business will be expanding, and I'm excited about that. Yeah, and I'm worried that I've forgotten some important thing, but those are kind of the main ones, and it's really great. We all work together and dream up projects together and do things, and that is a big part of the fun here is the way that we can expand out into all kinds of different areas.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny, even just the products, right? Like when my wife and I take our children to museums, right? There's always National Geographic products that our kids love. It could be like interesting, like mineral kits or
Hmm.
gemstone kits, right? That
Yep.
then have the tie back to the locations that they are. So it's such an authentic brand because it covers not just the nature aspect, the science aspect, all these different, pieces of it, but it also brings it back to travel
Hmm.
because it talks
Yeah.
about the locations, which then creates such a full story, which I think is so interesting and valuable. And there's not many brands out there like it that I can think of. I mean, I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of anything that would be even somewhat similar, and I just can't really think of anything.
We're no,
You
we're
know?
pretty, we're fairly one of a kind. It was one of the reasons that I was drawn to join the brand.
Yeah.
I think just it's special in that way.
Totally, totally. So with the podcast, with Luxury Travel Innovators, what we're gonna do is we're going to sort of ask you 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I haven't shared these ahead of time, so they are fully authentic. But I suppose that
I hope they're not too hard.
I don't think they're terribly hard.
Okay.
They're pretty. You'll nail them. And the good part is you're
Now
at
you're setting me up.
you're at a major disadvantage because going forward, if I'm going to ask these same 3 questions right on the rapid fire side, they'll be our signature at Luxury Travel Innovators.
You're gonna have to change it for season
I'm going to have
2.
to, because otherwise everybody's going to know exactly what I'm about to ask. So, first question is, what travel are you most excited about next?
Oh gosh. For me,
For you?
for me myself. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So I'm going to Chile in April. And this is a lame answer, Adam, but like I'm always kind of most excited about what my next big trip is actually, because that's what I'm thinking about and what I'm planning. And for me, like travel planning is a big part of the fun. So yes, I'm going to Chile in April. I've been to Chile a number of times, but I'm going to go to 2 parts of Chile I haven't been to before. The Lake District, which is meant to be really beautiful and I haven't been to, and Atacama, which I've never gotten up to. And I want to go there specifically. You may know Atacama is great for stargazing, and I am kind of obsessed with the night sky, like many National Geographic readers.
Very National Geographic of you.
Yes, so we're going to go up there and do some stargazing, which I'm really excited about. And so that's one of my that's upcoming and something I'm excited about. But there are lots of other places that I'm dying to go, of course. But that's what's on my mind right now.
Amazing. So the podcast is about innovation and about forward-looking things, but we'll take a quick step back into the past for a moment. What do you miss about sort of the glamour of travel, how it used to be? It could be things like the way first class used to be on planes, the way travel in general used to be on planes. It could be even the ashtrays and the way they stamped them with the Ritz-Carlton lion, Like what were those little things that we reminisce? What would you say would be yours?
I miss actually traveling without a phone. I miss what it was like to need to find your way around and use a map, and like a map that wasn't guiding you.
Yeah.
Just because I think it was easier to, like, the serendipity happened in those moments. Like you'd get lost in Venice and stumble upon something that you wouldn't have stumbled upon, and also like you were looking up and not down more often. And so I feel like literally like your posture was different, and and I think that was conducive to a certain kind of exploration. And so that's something I miss, even though I know that all of the information that's at our fingertips and the GPS and all that is so incredibly helpful, and it makes travel so much easier. So I don't know that I would turn back time, but I still miss it. I still miss that feeling. I didn't experience a lot of like the heyday of air travel, although I grew up in Wisconsin, and when I first started flying more frequently, when I was sort of a teenager, Midwest Express was still around. It was our local airline, and like I did start flying when they would like serve lobster tails and their and their fresh baked cookies or whatever, and that was great. That was so much fun, and it was very distinctive. And I guess I do miss some of those kinds of things, those little touches that don't make any economic sense probably for an airline, but they did, and they did them for everybody. It was like all business class airline or whatever. It was that was fun. I miss like things that are completely like not needed anymore, like stationary in a hotel.
Me too.
Like some still do it, but many don't like just don't have it anymore. I miss like opening up one of those books and there being like just beautiful stationery and a lovely
Totally.
pen or pencil, like that kind of thing. I think is very nice. Those are like a couple of things that come to mind. I'm sure there's like a heck of a lot more, but of course a lot of things are better too. But
Yeah. Well, that'll be our next question. But it's funny. It's you're so right. I love the pens and stationery and the postcards that you used to be able
postcards
to,
for sure.
in the room, and then it was the iconic picture of the hotel or the destination.
I still have a box full of them, like postcards of that I've collected and saved from hotels, like that. Yeah, and now you don't see them.
You don't see them very rarely. You'll see them, and it's funny that my grandfather used to travel quite a bit, and he had all of those postcards collected from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and I still have them as well, and it's amazing. It's kind of sad that's not more regular anymore.
Yeah, I also have a small collection of travel advertising as well, like old, like the posters and things, and like that's also like it's something that was so wonderful. Travel advertising was so artistic and inventive, and
totally.
I wish we saw a little bit more of that still too, but
totally. Well, since we're talking future, what innovation doesn't exist today that you think is missing from travel? And it could be an innovation that's physical. It could be just something around digital or marketing or web or app or anything in travel. What do you think is missing?
Gosh, that's such a good question. There's and I'm going to have like a kind of a like not great answer for this in some ways, but I still think that there's room for a more seamless integration of technology particularly into luxury experiences that help facilitate that experience. Like if you think about like what Uber and Lyft and others did for getting a car, like that's a piece of technology that's so elegant in some ways, right? Like it took something that was like kind of pain and annoying and unpredictable, and it like just made it like something you didn't have to think about anymore. I still think that there's more opportunity to bring some of that kind of thinking into how people encounter and experience luxury. I think that just makes certain things like just easier and more seamless. I think there's I wish that more, particularly I think about hotels and resorts in particular, and like ways in which I think like I still feel like the ways in which technology is used is sort of clunky in many cases, and very like, you can give me the iPad in the room, but it takes me a while to figure it out, and like, I don't really know what I'm meant to do with it. But then like, if I could just like see that menu of experiences and activities on offer and know what time they're happening, and just book it, like that would be great. I'd love that. I would love it if I could do that. But nobody offers that.
Totally.
So I think and I've talked with folks in luxury for many years about this, and like, and I know that there's like a pervasive feeling that like you don't want to take the human touch out of the experience. And I respect that, and I agree with it to some extent, but I also think that like we live so much of our lives with technology as like an intermediary that helps us, that I think more, particularly on the luxury end of the travel spectrum, I think more places need to think about how they can embrace some of that ethos and actually use it to improve people's experience and make it feel like it's hitting the level of some other things that are in fact like not even luxury experiences, if that makes sense.
Totally. Well, and there's the old saying, right, that simplicity is the ultimate form of luxury. And what's funny is with a lot of our clients, when we're working with them, right, it's about finding that balance between sophistication as well as personalized service that defines, hospitality, where hospitality in essence is a people business. It's a human business. But understanding that we're not taking away the human touch, but that at different periods and different times, people expect and need different things, right? If I'm traveling for business, I don't necessarily need to be escorted to the view and have you been here before, and the whole experiential arrival that you might want on a vacation, right?
Yeah.
But if you're, to your point, on vacation and everything else, also, what's the ease of being able to look at experiences and make them bookable, to have it in one place like an app or something that's really simple? Or like there's nothing more frustrating, than when somebody shows up to a hotel and there's no experience you can offer them because everything's booked.
Yeah, totally.
And you've come
Happens all
that
the
long
time.
way. It happens all the time, right?
Mhm.
And so being able to
Good luck getting a spa treatment.
Exactly. And so it's like having the ability to inform people ahead of time so that they can actually take advantage is actually a luxury experience.
Totally. Well, and I think too, like it's like everything, like technology can be an enabler that then frees the humans to be more human and to pay more attention to the things where they can add value and improve the experience. And there's a net positive there when done the right way.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Nathan. We're grateful to have you on Luxury Travel Innovators and be our first guest, our inaugural guest.
I feel very privileged. Thank you.
And to bring me back to DC. So
thanks you for coming here as well. Yeah, it's great to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.